working for the Dalai Lama is the best job you never knew existed.
That's absolutely true. I was wondering why it took so long till I got your invitation. They treated my daughter like like an object, like an animal. You draw a circle, she cannot do it. And then the second question was, is she able to go to school? She said, I don't think so. And then they said, goodbye.
Your children have taught you more about life than any High Lama ever could.
Absolutely true.
Imagine your job is to manage the legacy of the Dalai Lama. Compassion, peace, global harmony. That's the world Tenzin Sewo works in every day. But when he goes home, he faces a reality that no amount of administration can fix. 10 years ago, his firstborn daughter was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder. A huge shock. In this episode, we talk about the difference between spiritual theory and the hard, practical reality of being a parent of a disabled child. We talk about karma, accepting your own reality, and why sometimes you have to be selfish to survive. My name is Namri Songtsen Linduptayap, and this is Out of Tibet. How would you describe your job to a 5-year-old kid?
So I think I would need to ask ChatGPT for this one. I really don't know. To a 5-year-old, my smallest daughter, she's now 4.5. I would say that I'm sitting in an office. I work with the computer. I get letters and then I reply to these letters.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Watching the series Severance.
Severance, that's too complicated.
I started watching that with my daughter. For anyone who doesn't know what Severance is about, there's people sitting in an office doing something and no one knows what they're doing.
Yeah. I watched the first 2 episodes and then I had to stop it because I would like to spend my free time with the easy stuff. It's really too complicated.
What is your full name?
My full name is Sewo, is the family name. And then from His Holiness given Tenzin Tamje.
I have to ask, what does Tamje mean?
Tamje means the true Dharma. I consider myself to be the holder of the true Dharma. There's a distinction.
I get asked so often what my name means. Where were you born?
I was born in a very small town here in Switzerland in the eastern part. It's called Frauenfeld. Raised in Münchwilen, in a very small village. We call it in German, Tibeterheim, a Tibetan home there. Many Tibetans, when they arrived in the early 60s, the families, they found refuge there because nearby there were some factories where all these Tibetans were then working,
Yeah, and for those of us who don't know, are there many Tibetans in Switzerland?
I would guess now we are approaching 10,000, maybe.
I mean, it is one of the biggest communities outside of India, right?
After China invaded Tibet, Switzerland was one of the first Western countries that has taken Tibetan refugees. And when I grew up, the Tibetan community was considered to be large, approximately 2,000 Tibetans. But this changed dramatically in the past 15 to 20 years.
And your nationality is?
I'm a Tibetan Swiss.
So you carry both passports?
Yes. I have the Green Book and the Swiss national passport. My father, in the early 90s, he had the wish to go back to Tibet because of the passing of the 16th Karmapa and the reincarnation of the 17th Karmapa, Udyan Tilen Dorje, in Tibet. So that's his root guru. And he wanted to go back to Tibet to come or to Lhasa in Tsurpu. That's the main monastery of the Karmapa. But he was not into take over the Chinese passport. So at that time, he applied for the Swiss citizenship for all the members of the family, yeah.
And hold on, is your father in Tibet now?
No, he passed away in 2008. So he just went back to see the reincarnation of the 16th Karmapa. He was there when during the enthronement of the 17th Karmapa in Tibet, in Tsurpu.
And what about your mother?
She is still alive and she still lives in Münchwilen, in this small village, yeah.
Okay, so it's rather close to you where you live. You live in Zurich.
Yeah, she considers that I live very far away, of course.
Yeah. As all parents do.
As all parents do. And in Switzerland, every city or village that is more than 20 minutes away is already considered to be very far away. So I live here in Zurich, downtown.
It's all relative, right? I mean, distance.
It's all relative. And a friend of mine living in Dharamsala, he said, "Oh, I need to have new sneaker. I go down to Delhi." Then he went by car to Delhi at that time, 11 hours. And then he came back with new sneakers, so it's all relative.
So we've got your personal details in line. I have prepared a few true or false questions for you. And I was wondering if you think they're true or false, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is, working for the Dalai Lama is the best job you never knew existed.
That's absolutely true.
You can't prepare for it, right? I mean, you when you started off, you didn't say, one day I'm going to work for the Dalai Lama Foundation.
I was always into the Tibetan world, the Tibetan side of my life. Growing up in Switzerland, you have always some inner struggle, how you spend your life, you compare yourself to others, and then you live in these two worlds. And my Tibetan side was always very strong. And from child on,
Why was that, do you think?
That's a good question. Growing up in this Tibetan home, first of all, my father was very religious. He conducted all these religious ceremonies at our home with a nice park and all the families. Each family had one room. And then getting into life with a good job and getting more money. So all the families, they moved away. But our family, we stayed. And at that time, I felt very uncomfortable because it was not very nice, But now looking back, for a child, it is a paradise, There's a big park outside. Just these external factors gave my father and my parents the opportunity to also celebrate the Tibetan way of life. Losar was not just one afternoon. Losar was 3 days, and the entire Tibetan community of Münchwilen, they came to our home, and we celebrated Losar. And then there is Bumtsok and all these religious festivities. This had some imprint, of course, not always good. Sometimes also I felt obliged. I felt, stressed with all these things. And then I spent many years in the Tibetan dance group of the Tibetan community in Switzerland. That was also a very nice time. And then the Tibetan Youth Association. So this Tibetan part was always very, very strong. And so when I was 14, 15, I felt the urge to do more for Tibet, not just in my spare time. From that time, I always felt that sometime I need to do more. There's a natural link to His Holiness. So maybe this was a kind of preparation because, but actually doing the job I had to learn a lot and to experience a lot. I'm in his service since 2007, now 18 years. And still every day I feel very privileged and honored to have this opportunity.
Now, it's interesting what you said with your father being so religious that it influenced you strongly, because my father is also very religious.
Yes.
But that didn't automatically make me very Tibetan in the sense of we didn't celebrate a lot of Tibetan festivities. But that was due to the fact that we were pretty much the only Tibetans growing up in that city where I grew up. So the community does play a huge role, right?
Absolutely.
So next, true or false? You secretly wish you had a boring 9-to-5 job where nobody knows your name.
You secretly wished you have I have a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah, but a boring 9-to-5 job where nobody knows your name.
I don't think about this stuff, I'm just doing my job here.
You're just doing your job, okay?
No, but Namri, being in service for His Holiness also demands that you be aware of the action you do and the consequences, what you say and how you behave. It's not that it's like I'm in chain. Absolutely not. But on the other hand, the dynamics are so fast and everybody is a news reporter and you have to be careful. Yeah, of course. His Holiness always says, action, prayers won't help. Yeah. Action is needed.
Exactly.
And if I'm a magician, he says, if I'm a magician, I would heal my knees,
Or maybe while he's at it, free Tibet. Okay.
Yeah.
We've known each other for quite some time, so I know you have one kid who has special needs. So next true or false is raising a special needs kid has made you less religious and more practical. True or false?
True. It depends on the circumstance. It depends on my, I would say, mental state.
Mm.
My eldest daughter, she's now 10. She has a very rare genetic disorder. It's called Phelan-McDermid syndrome. That is on the 22nd chromosome. Some genes are missing, and that translates into a mental disability and also physical disability. She can walk and so on, but she cannot talk. Now, in the past 2 months, I observed that some words are coming.
Okay.
Yeah. But for example, she has still diapers because she's hypotone. Still, every day, there's a moment I think about why she's like she is. And then the 99% of the other time, I have to be very practical. I have to just do the care work, my wife, myself. So there's not much room left for.
I was going to continue with the true or false, but now, I mean, since we're talking about this, I think this is much more important. How was that like when you got the diagnosis back then?
That was quite a difficult time for us, because when she was born, when the child is small, you don't see the differences,
Yeah,
but
sure.
then after 1 year, we still had the impression, maybe she's late. There's some, late developer and so on. And, at the same time in the family, there were also some children in the same age. And then after 1 year, 1.5 years, then you see the differences are getting bigger and bigger.
So you already knew there was something going on, or was that not clear?
At that time, not. But I would say that some friends of ours who have experience with children with disabilities, I think they saw it and they just gave us some hints. And then also the doctor of our kids, the pediatric, she's a very good friend of my wife. And she said then, let's go to the children's hospital, to the neurodevelopmental department, and let's do just a check, just to be on the safe side. And then we went there, and this appointment, this test was really awful for us, because they treated my daughter. I call her C1, if that's okay for you. I have 3 daughters, C1, C2, and C3. She was treated like like an object.
Yeah.
Maybe like an animal, they just throw things to her and said, now you build a train and now you build a tower. Okay, she cannot do this, put it away. Now next thing, now draw a circle. Oh, she cannot do it like this.
Unbearable for a parent to watch.
Yeah. And, the doctor who was responsible at the Children's Hospital in Zurich, the neurologist, he was not very compassionate. He was just saying, we can do a genetic test, but it will be difficult to find something. Then we did it. And then I got a call from the Zurich University genetics department, and we should come. Then I asked, can you tell me something? What does this mean now? Is it good or not good? And my wife and myself, we went to this department, and the room was like, it was cold. And there was a lady sitting there, and she said, Mr. and Mrs. Sewo, we found something. So, what does it mean? We found something. Yeah, there's some genes are missing. And I remember that my wife's first reaction was, so that must be just a coincidence by nature.
Yeah.
She said, yes. And then the second question was, is she able to go to school? Because school is something that's the standard. Every child goes to school and has friends and then so on. And then she said, I don't think so. And then they said, goodbye. And we left the building, and, we just got the diagnosis. Our firstborn daughter has a genetic condition, and the future is, she said, we don't know about the future. Yeah, maybe not. Pang, and then you are left alone with this. That was quite horrible, and it took some time to...
Who did you turn to for advice?
A lot of talks with family members, with friends, and my wife also suggested, let's go to the Rikon Tibetan monastery. That's one of the oldest Tibetan monastery in the West. The abbot, I called him and I said that there's some developments and we would like to meet you. We went there. And I was prepared that he says, normally the lamas, and so they say, okay, now you do this prayer and you do this mantra 40 times. But he was not that kind of lama. The first thing he said is, always treat your daughter as she's normal. Now, this sounds like a little bit strange, but, talk to her and do not always feel that she's so different, and do not behave differently because she has these conditions. just talk to her and so, because this would leave an imprint for the next life and for the next life and so on. And that, okay, I don't know whether this was helpful, but he was very practical. And then he said, do some massage. In the Tibetan tradition, some massage helps also for the brain development and for the subtle things, for the non-subtle things. Such advice, and that was quite surprising and also at that time helpful.
Were you like hoping for some religious miracle?
No,
when you went
honestly
there?
No. And I still don't do this. Honestly, I'm not that religious.
It makes two of us, yeah.
Buddhism helps me. To be religious means that do you all these things that you need to do, but all these things, I'm not a very, practitioner. That disappointment was very helpful. And then, of course, it takes time. And still, for me, it's still, a lot of question marks.
This abbot from Rikon is saying that to treat her like every other human being, I think makes totally sense. Then again, at the same time, there's the certain realities of life. Like,
yes.
I don't know, like maybe like 3 a.m, something goes wrong or whatever. What does it actually look like when you feel super exhausted and there's no solution around the corner?
When we got the diagnosis, and this was also something that the therapist told me, so there are 3 stages of grief. First of all, you need to digest this diagnosis, and then you need to overcome you lost a healthy child. And especially if it's your firstborn, you have some impressions of life, of being a father, and so on. And then you realize that you need to put this away. The 3rd stage is then you have fear about the future. She doesn't talk, and all these factors. So these 3 stages, and I cannot tell you in which stage I'm now in. Maybe it's overlapping.
And how do you personally deal with this challenge of a situation?
I would say, first of all, you just do the things you need to do. That's why I said 99% it's practical thing. Sometimes it's helpful because there's not much room for a lot of self-reflection. And I had to learn to take things out just for myself, to do
Take
sports.
Your own time, you mean?
Yes, to do sports, to do maybe some travelings alone. I also started with the psychotherapy. I have a lot of chats with friends. So 3 or 4 years after the diagnosis, I was ready to read more about this syndrome. My wife, she handled this differently. Doesn't mean it was less painful or so. I was avoiding it. I didn't read about these things. She was already a member of families with kids with the same syndrome.
Yeah.
There's an organization in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria because this syndrome is very rare.
How many people have this?
It must be so around, 10,000 worldwide. Yeah. Things are changing because the diagnosis instruments are getting better and better, and you can find in the genetics and so forth. I avoided this topic. I was just absorbed with dealing day by day. Then after 3-4 years, I started to read more about this syndrome in the scientific papers. And then I had a phase where I was so enthusiastic because these papers, these forward-looking, medical papers, I didn't understand everything, but always they convey the message of, and they see here a possibility with this kind of intervention and this and that. Maybe so 1 or 2 years later, there was this kind of wake-up call. You realize that it doesn't process so fast, And you see the comparison during the pandemic. The whole world needed the vaccination. Moderna and BioNTech and all this were capable to provide this vaccination within a couple of weeks,
Yeah, exactly.
There was money, there was, of course, and for rare disorder communities, it's a lot of, lobby work and this and that. But still, I am optimistic. There's an Australian company who developed a kind of syrup that, addresses this disorder. And they are now in the 3rd trial phase, which is quite good. So that
far down the line already.
Yes. And
like 4 or 5? How many are there?
3. So there's 3 phases. And now the 3rd is that you can apply and then they will do placebo tests and or randomized and all these things. I also, read about AI in the medical sector, so in the genetics and all these things with a certain interest, but not a lot of expectation.
You said before that after a few years, you started to take time for yourself. That sounds healthy because people get immersed and lost in helping somebody else, but they start forgetting taking care of themselves. And then you can't help anyone.
Yeah, that's the thing. And you also cannot help your child.
Yeah, you have to be selfish a little bit. I mean, really, I read so few of these books, how to be a good parent, whatever. There was one book, he was actually a Swiss author. He said, you have to be selfish to be a good parent.
Yeah, that's true. And
I didn't think about that first because I thought I had to do everything for my children.
But this is the same thing that His Holiness always says about egoism. If you want to do a good thing for yourself, then do good thing to others. Because if they do good and you are a member of the community, if they do well, then it automatically falls back to you. So if you are clever, if you are intelligent and egoist, then do good thing to other people, And in this context, first of all, just physically, you need to take care of yourself. And I realized that with 3 kids, it's with the eldest one with this disorder, I have to be that there needs to be some strength. And when I started, for example, with my gym exercises, you feel that difference within days. If things are easier in handling the kids, and my eldest daughter now, she's, I would say, 30 kilos. Sometimes I have to carry her and so. And then if you have strength, then it makes everything easier. Yeah. And then at the end also mentally, it makes it easier.
After having your first daughter, was there ever a time you thought, maybe because that must have been unbelievably tiring mentally and physically. And was there a time where you thought, let's not have any more kids?
That was never in play because when our second daughter was born, 2018, we didn't know about the diagnosis. We were in the process of doing the checkups and so. And then she was born in 2018, and then in 2019, in March, we got the diagnosis. So my eldest daughter was then 3 years old. We always had the wish to have three kids.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. One aspect was also the consideration of we thought a lot about the future of C1. And now there's C2. It also made some sense, and it was also comforting to know that C2 has a younger sister or brother. That was one aspect. It was not the main reason, but it was also one aspect that we thought about it.
I would assume that Switzerland has a great support system. Is that true, or is it difficult to fight for every therapy? Or
the thing is that the disorder that my daughter has is not. In order to benefit from all the benefits that the social system has, you need to be a number in the catalog. The disorder has to be standardized, and then according this number, the therapies are defined. And this is a rare genetic disorder, and that's the problem. For that, you need a lobby who says, okay, this rare genetic disorder exists and it exists with these symptoms and with these therapies are needed and so on. And so on. In the US, there's a big foundation, Phelan-McDermid Foundation, and they are working on it. Last year or the year before, the World Health Organization recognized that it's a disorder, but it has to be translated into the local national system, in the Swiss system. In the case of my daughter, it is very obvious that she's handicapped mentally and physically. The social system, they acknowledged that, they said, okay, we can give her the number 403, which means that her intelligence is lowered, impaired. And according to that, she needs some special care in the school. But they didn't recognize that she has physically a disability. She can walk, but she cannot put the clothes on herself, and so she has diapers and so. And all these things needs to be covered now by other insurances. But you have to do all these things by yourself. Some told me that, it's tragic what happened to your daughter and to you as a family, but still maybe you can find comfort that you still live in one of the best country in the world. imagine you would be in Africa or so.
It doesn't help you. I mean, that's...
I would say, yeah, maybe if I would always think about the global situation, but then you can put aside everything that is hurting, because you always find someone who is doing worse than you, but you need to deal with it.
It's the situation which is so difficult, and on top of that, all these administrative and organizational things pile up.
And then, you know, just talking about this, what came to my mind is someone saying, but C1 is so lucky that she found such parents who are so dedicated, and say, okay, but that doesn't help me.
Doesn't help you, but
because
it's still nice to hear, I guess.
Yeah. No, nowadays not, honestly, because nowadays I'm in that sense. At the beginning, I was not able to say handicap, and I was always fighting against it. I was always saying, no, my child, she's different, but she's still normal. Like the Thai saying, same, but different. Yeah. And I would like that you treat my daughter not differently, and so on and so on. But at that time, I was avoiding the acceptance of the situation. And then the third one I hear is, this makes you also now maybe more social, but I do not wish the same situation to any other family.
Has this changed how you do your job at the foundation, for example? Are you more compassionate, would you say? Or are you becoming even more impatient with, let's say, small problems?
No, impatient not. More compassionate, it's difficult to say. It's naturally that you change when you become a father. Sometimes I describe it that there's a life before being a father. That's one chapter. And then that's the second chapter when you're a father. I don't know whether you know this movie by Lars von Trier, Melancholia. There's our two chapters there. There's a blue planet coming on the Earth, and then the Earth is destroyed and life is ended.
Okay.
And in this movie, there's chapter 1 that the people are enjoying wine and so, and there's the second chapter where you realize maybe it's not a good comparison, but I sometimes see, okay, there's a life before being a father, and then now, because it completely changes. Your child would not exist without you and your wife. Every other object and sentient beings and subjects on this earth, in this universe, would still exist without you, but your child not. And there's this, of course, this special link. Maybe it has changed how I read emails with requests to His Holiness, especially when these are emails from people who are struggling, but not that I would now do some priority or so.
We've jumped about so much, and we've talked about your family, which I appreciate a lot. Thank you for sharing this. But I would like to jump back to you. And when you were young, you grew up in a more rural part of Switzerland. You said you had a great time living there with a community of Tibetans, but that community started to change quite a bit. Tibetans started to move away because finding new jobs or maybe having more money. What was life like for you growing up as a Tibetan in Switzerland in the early years, let's say in the teenager years?
In the teenage years, I always felt that growing up as a young Tibetan in Switzerland is that you have this somehow luxury that you have two communities where you can evolve. And I always considered myself as being a member of the Swiss and also a member of the Tibetans. Quite early, I began to be a bridge. Not intentionally, but I think every young Tibetan living in Switzerland is a kind of a bridge between the culture. In this small village where I lived, the Tibetans were very welcome, and the Swiss population there accepted the Tibetans, and they left this room to do your culture things and so forth, and very accommodating. And of course, this makes things much easier. That was, in the 80s.
Why is it Tibetan so good? It's really great for those of us who don't know.
I had to speak Tibetan because my parents' German was so bad. So we were just talking Tibetan at home. And then one part of my life was that I spent 1 year in a Tibetan monastery here in Switzerland. When I was a child, my parents, they sent me in a Tibetan monastery when I was 5. So at that time I was wearing monk's robes. But, I was 5,
Did you know what was going on?
No, I absolutely didn't know. So I just have some fragments of what I remember. But and then with 6, the school career starts here in Switzerland. And from what I heard is that my other siblings, who are much older than myself, they insisted that I should start with the school career here, not sent to India for a monastic education. And so then I came back to my home.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 3 brothers and 3 sisters, and I'm the youngest.
And your other siblings, were they sent to monasteries?
No, I sometimes jokingly say I was the last chance for my father, that he has someone from his family to become a monk. He grew up in Kham. At that time, it was normal that one child of your family goes to the monastery because, that was the opportunity.
There's like this rule, if I remember correctly.
A rule, or it was also, the monastery where the institutions where you can learn the alphabet, also, Kakakanga and all these things. At least one child, maybe also this religious context or aspect, but also you have someone who can read and write Tibetan,
So you were there when you were 5, and did you come home, or were you staying there like boarding school?
It was a boarding school. There was another Tibetan boy who was maybe 1 or 2 years older, and we were the only 2 boys, and the rest were monks, some Tibetan monks and some Chige monks, I remember. Yeah. In the past couple of years, I'm thinking more and more about this part of my life, because first of all, now I am a father of kids who are in the same age. My middle one is 7 and the smallest one is 4.5. And for me, it's obvious I would never send my kid to such an institution, Sometimes I feel that this time there has some repercussions to how I am today. But I don't blame. My father has passed. My mother still lives. I don't blame her. But I also don't tell her that from today's perspective, it was wrong. Now she's over 80. She sometimes tells me that it was good that we sent you there, so now you can write and read Tibetan. She has this romanticized impression of that time, and that's okay. I have to deal it with myself. I don't want to give her some bad feelings.
Yeah.
And then I spent many years in the Tibetan dance group, the Tsokwa, here in Switzerland.
Do you still know all these dances?
No.
Come on,
no.
I think you will be able to dance quite well.
Yeah, maybe that after 1-2 days practice, maybe I can do it. But that was a time that you are confronted with Tibetan music, Tibetan texts, lyrics, and so forth. That was also helpful. And then when I started my political engagement in the Tibetan Youth Association, that was a time when the Tibetan radios came up, Radio Free Asia, Voice of Tibet, Voice of America. And I was listening to all these news reports. At the same time, I was also reading what they publish on the website. So that helped me, to do, this word and so forth. And yeah, I think these are the things that were helpful.
Right. And then you finished school. And did you immediately start working, or did you go and study first?
After the 9th grade, I started working. I did an apprenticeship in commercial. You learn how to run an office, for 3 years. And then after that, I started preschool for 2 years so that you can go to the university. And then in 2009, when I was already working for the Central Tibetan Administration, I started my study at the University of Zurich. I did my major in political science.
How did you get into the CTA, the Central Tibetan Administration?
From 2002 till 2006, for 2 terms, I was the president of the Tibetan Youth Association, and you are exposed to the Tibetan world, and you engage and you meet people. And then being a member of the Tibetan Youth Association, you are dealing with a lot of Tibetan support groups worldwide. And this is a thing that you have to learn. A lot of things I can do easily today in the context of, organizing, talking, and all these things I learned in the Tibetan Youth Association. Honestly, this is, I would say, the best school for life when it comes to if you want to engage yourself in the public, if you want to create something, if you want to organize something, if you want to do international things, because you really learn it by doing. And the Tibetan Youth Association in Europe was always a home, because the people, the former board members, they were always there and helped you. And then in 2005, His Holiness was for 2 weeks in Switzerland, in Zurich, and he gave teachings. And I was then asked by the Office of Tibet here in Geneva, that's the representative's office, asked whether I could help with the media work for this event. That, of course, was an opportunity. And during that visit, someone close to His Holiness asked whether I could consider to work for his office in Geneva. At that time, I was working at the Swiss Stock Exchange, you know.
That's quite different.
Quite different in the IT department, but I was still there doing a lot of Tibet work. So my mind was always there, Tibet work. And so that was the opportunity to do my passion, the thing that was dear to my heart in a professional way, you know. And then I said yes. And then in March 2007, I started my job at the office in Geneva. And I did it for 1 year, and then I moved back to Zurich. And from then I worked for the envoy of His Holiness, Gaden Phodrang, who at that time was still traveling to Beijing with late Gerumche. It was a very interesting time, you know.
Did you join them as well?
I didn't join them, but I was quite involved with preparing these visits. Gaden was he was not just giving you tasks, but he was always involving you and always asking you about, do you think about that? Very trustworthy and accommodating.
Okay, so you were part of the CTA, and then the next step was the Dalai Lama Foundation.
Yeah, in 2016, Gaden Phodrang then retired. 2 years before that, in 2014, if I'm remembering correctly, he resigned from, you know, doing this dialogue with Beijing. And then in 2016 was the formal official retirement. And I was at that time his assistant, his aide. And so I had to think about my future. If there's no special envoy, then there's no need for an assistant of the special envoy. At that time, I was in my last semester for my master's, and then I became father. So it was quite a turbulent time. And then I had also to think about my near future. What am I going to do in July 2016 when Gaden Phodrang is retired?
Did you feel like extra pressure? Like financial pressure because you became a father?
Of course. And then I already applied for, here in Switzerland, you call it RAF. That's the regionale Arbeitsvermittlung.
They will place you for work.
Yeah. And you would get some money if you are jobless. Then I got a call from Dharamsala.
The Dalai Lama called.
Not His Holiness, but another guy called me.
Imagine that would have been a cool story. I think you should.
That would be that would be. And he said, now in July, there's this change. And if I could come to Dharamsala and work there, you know, someone from the CTA called me. Yeah. Then I said, what will I do there? Yeah, you could read some rules and regulations and learn how the accounting works at CTA. I said, no. I can't come. First of all, I'm in the last semester of my master's study, and I just became father, and I definitely won't leave my family here. I said, thank you, but no. And then, you know, His Holiness established the foundation in 2015 here in Switzerland.
All right.
And there were some discussions going on that maybe it's good to have an office here and to build up this foundation. Gaden Phodrang and myself, we were helping to establish this foundation. And then, I brought up this idea, and I knew that there was this discussion going on to have an office and stuff and so on. And then I applied, to set up an office and to look for people I could imagine to do this job. And then luckily and very privileged, then I got the job being the executive director now.
How do you explain to someone who doesn't know anything about the Dalai Lama Foundation what you do?
The foundation was set up by His Holiness with the wish to help others, to put it in simple terms. The foundation is there to support the 4 commitments of His Holiness, to promote human values, to promote interreligious harmony, preservation of Tibet's culture, and the protection of Tibetan ecology. And lastly, also to find new interests to convey the Indian ancient wisdom, the Buddhism, and also it has a very strong charitable nature. These are the main objectives. And we have some programs that repeats every year. For example, we have the Dalai Lama Graduate Scholarship. So His Holiness and the foundation would spend nearly $250,000 every year for Tibetan students studying abroad in the US or in Europe or in Australia who are enrolled in a master or PhD study. We have every year around 40 students.
You have to be Tibetan, though, to receive this scholarship.
Yes.
If somebody grew up in Germany, doesn't have a Tibetan passport, but his parents are, or her parents are Tibetans, would they be eligible to apply for the scholarship?
The Green Book is a requirement.
Okay. Great.
You know, you need to have the Green Book. Yeah, that's a requirement.
You being with the Dalai Lama Foundation, Gaden
Phodrang Foundation of the Dalai Lama.
You know, let's say if you talk to somebody in Dharamsala, does it open every door? Or,
in Dharamsala, yes.
Yeah. Okay. But elsewhere, what is that like?
Elsewhere, I would say it applies the same thing because His Holiness's image and, you know, how people see His Holiness, perceive him is so positive. There's no marketing behind that. That's his true personality that he also not only gives in teachings or in or online, but also he lives it. At the end, I think that's maybe my hopeful thing for the humanity, that these values are still cherished and appreciated. And if I need to approach an institution or what else, and I say I'm writing on behalf of the Gaden Phodrang Foundation or His Holiness, there's a lot of sympathy. People try to help and so forth.
How did your parents react when you told them you are with the Dalai Lama Foundation?
You know, they are maybe also a little bit used to it, that I have these changes in my life, but the constant factor was always Tibet and His Holiness. So they will say, now you live to Geneva, okay. The fears and anxiety parents have, so, and then how do you live there, and this, and the money, is it sufficient? Yeah. And so these are the questions. And
do you eat enough? Would you say that your job is a high-pressure job?
No, I don't consider it as a high-pressure job. I am alone here at the foundation. I work closely with the board members. It depends on the project, but there are some time periods where the pressure is quite high. But then there's also some periods where it's just a 9-to-5 job. I'm alone here, so I need to cover all the things. I need to do office job. I need to do sometimes strategy job. I need to do meetings and fundraising, not that much. But still, I need to attend conferences. So it's very diverse, and that's the nice part of this job, yeah.
And how much direct contact have you had with His Holiness the Dalai Lama?
It began in 2007. The Office of Tibet in Geneva is responsible for when His Holiness visits Central Europe, Germany, Switzerland, and so forth, Italy. His Holiness visited Germany many times, over 35 times, and also Switzerland, Austria, Italy. And then you join the entourage, and then you are very close to His Holiness. And I have no number, but it was many times, and I feel very, very honored, yeah.
On the one hand, you grew up in Switzerland. You've always managed to juggle being Tibetan and being Swiss. Now you are with the Dalai Lama Foundation. Do you feel at home in both worlds, Switzerland and the Tibetan community?
I feel very much at home. The reason is, I don't know, a different setup, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing, yeah. You're just used to it, I guess.
Totally used to it. When I travel to Dharamsala, I feel more Swiss. When I'm with my Swiss friends, I feel very Tibetan. Otherwise, it's just me. I do not think about these setups. Maybe you do some self-reflection just out of curiosity, and then you find yourself, in that sense, I'm the Tibetan. So, but normally I never do these self-reflections. I'm just myself.
Can you switch it just on and off, being Tibetan or Swiss?
No, because I'm just who I am. And I don't think about, now this is the Tibetan part, now this is the Swiss part. If you are in an environment and then you behave a little bit different, or you don't laugh to a joke or so, then you realize, maybe this is the Tibetan part in this Swiss environment.
I certainly feel exactly like this, because I get asked so often, so do you feel more German or Tibetan? It's just one. It's like switching languages. I don't think about that I'm switching a language. Or like sometimes people say, oh yeah, I just stayed in America for 3 weeks. My German's got really bad. And I think, but why?
But why?
There's no switch.
Yeah, true.
It's just, I don't know what to call it. It's just the same for me.
Yeah, true.
I don't think about it. But I have to admit that this podcast has been difficult for me because I had everything prepared as usual. And
I'm very sorry that I made the podcast so difficult. But at the same time, that was my goal. You also need to be challenged a little bit.
You just keep thinking about your kids' situation and your situation dealing with this disability. I was wondering, you've always been open about this, especially with other Tibetans? Or is this like the first time you're publicly saying what it is like being a father of disabled?
Publicly, maybe the first time I asked my wife whether it's okay to talk about this part of my life. And she said, of course, because families who are doing this care job, they need to have more somehow presence. Yeah, the people know that there are some families who have maybe a different structure. Of course, every family has its challenges. And then secondly, at the beginning, it was difficult for me to talk about this. And I was also very hesitant to use some well-established expressions about handicap and disability. Maybe I didn't want to realize it. I didn't want to make it the reality. There was still hope and everything. But today, I think I have realized that it won't help if you think that avoiding this and that would make things better. I remember when we had the first discussion with the school manager of the kindergarten where C1 went, he said, handicapped children? There is not such things. We consider every child the same. At that time, it felt so good. But nowadays, I must say, that's absolutely wrong. Okay. These kids, they are handicapped. They need special need.
Special attention.
Because my daughter, she cannot talk, So that means for the school, they need to conduct the communication with us in a different way.
How does she communicate?
First things, you learn to anticipate her behavior. Now she has learned to say yes and no, which is very important, especially to say no. That's for other children, so-called healthy children. It's the normal thing to. But for her, she had to learn it, and she had to learn to show with her finger this and that. She wants this, she's thirsty, and so forth. And now we are working a lot with drawings. There's one picture for I want, and then there's a picture for water. And now she needs to learn this concept that she can show it. And now we are applying for a computer for a talker. She's always carrying a folder with all these picture in it, and then we are in the process of learning it. It's also quite challenging for us, for the caregivers, because you have to use it. Then you have the other, C2 and C3. They have also their demands and wishes, and time is not sufficient. But then the talker is much easier to carry it with you, and that's the hope that this makes things better. So if she realizes that, okay, the others understand what my feeling is or what my need is, that's a totally different world. Also on facial expression, if she realizes that I have understood her, then pang, yeah.
But when you explain your family situation to, let's say, Tibetans or to your Swiss friends, is it different how you explain it, or is it exactly the same? In the West, we sometimes talk about, so this is all about genetics, or it was bad luck that your kid is different. At the same time, with us Tibetans or people who believe in karma, have you heard somebody saying, look, it's all karma, and that's why it is like that?
No, I don't think that someone told me directly into my face that that's karma, something like this. But I feel that people are thinking this way, because that's the first thing what the Tibetan would think, because everything is le.
Yeah.
Le Gyungde,
Yeah.
The law of cause and effect. But that's okay if they think so. I have also some moments where I think, why did this happen to her? Why did this happen to myself? Then it's so self-pityness. But it doesn't help. At the same time, sometimes if I have a very weak moment, then I, yeah.
How do you deal with this situation when this happens?
How do I deal with it? The thought is coming and it's going. And I have just to bear it and just to somehow manage it. And on a rational level, I know that to this question, there's no answer. No one can give me an answer, but still, that's the question at that moment. If someone could give me an answer, it would be so helpful. And
what kind of effect did it have on your relationship with your wife?
Of course, sometimes it's stressful because it's not always synchron, your emotional level. There are moments where I have a very weak, sad moment where at the same time she thinks I can handle it. From a Buddhist point of view, this is the opportunity to be compassionate and this is the opportunity to be helpful. And so, but at the same time, it's very depressing. It's also an extra luggage. Your own situation is already challenging, and then you have the partner, and this makes things sometimes difficult. But at the same time, we have a lot of shared joyful moments, and we always say that that's our reality. Earlier, sometimes I did compare to other families with so-called normal kids. Then you see
going to school now and doing this and that.
Then you see all the differences and you see this and that thing. It's for them much easier because they do not have to consider, for example, if you go to a birthday party. Nowadays, it's much easier. But some years back, to go as a family to other people's home or to a birthday party, you need to do some preparations. Who will be following C1? Because she can walk. She has not autism, but she has some autistic behavioral aspects. Someone needs to be dedicated fully. Does it make sense to go with C1 to this party because you can't enjoy the party? All these things you have to think about and so on and so on. But nowadays it's I don't think about these things, So you just...
How much do you think about C2 and C3?
A lot, especially if you have a sibling that is handicapped, you have to deal with it. But at the same time, you also grow with it. For them, C1 was always like this. But just some days back, C2 told me that sometimes I feel kind of shame for C1 in the public because she sees that
she's embarrassed. You mean?
She's embarrassed kind of because she sees how other children look to her sister and then she has to deal with it. That's why we read a lot about this kind of family constellation. So there are two broad possibilities how C2 and C3 will develop. Either they will totally isolate themselves, kind of, I have nothing to do with C1, or they would give up themselves and totally absorb in this situation and just to be here for C1.
And there's no middle path?
This would be the nice thing, to have this combination, this umelam. But for that, you have to be alert. You have to always be with them, talk with them, but also always say, that your Ajla is this and that. And I remember that C2, when she was 2 years old, she was already then very, very alert. When we went to a shopping mall and I parked my car and C1 went out to the car, then C2 yelled at me and she said, Pala, Ajla yagusia, Ajla simna, Ajla yagusina. To be 2 years old.
Watch out for the kid,
Yeah. And then I talked to my Gesingyansela once about this, and at that time I was quite, I didn't know what to do with C2 and so. And then he said a thing that was very helpful. He said, you can't isolate her. You can't just create this perfect world for her. And, it's also her reality that she has a sister with a handicap. That's her reality, And sometimes, as the Buddhist saying goes, you have just accept the reality. Yeah.
How do you think can we, anyone, support families in similar situations?
I would make a distinction, family who are close to us, friends, of course, they can help. Now I'm just telling you very practical things. For example, today, when we are recording this, it's Monday. Monday, late afternoon, C1 always goes for a horse riding therapy. That's for 1 hour. That's very helpful. And she loves it. It's not just the riding. She also needs to prepare the horse. That's all these things, the steps you need to do. And this is so helpful for her that she knows what she needs to do. And then she can go for a ride with the therapist. And I go with her every week. I drive her to this place. This is also the bridge to your question, when do I take time for myself? At the beginning, I was always accompanying her. I went with her and the therapist, and then we did this round. But now I see that she can do it by herself with the therapist. I take out my time and I go for a run. And that's me time. And for example, this is something that someone could say, hey, I know you need to drive her to this place. That's 20 minutes away. It's not that far away, but still the preparation and all these things. At the end, it takes 2 hours of your day. This is something that I can do. Maybe not every week, but every second Monday, I will go with C1 to this place. Or if I would like to spend the weekend with my wife and, for, I don't know, for a vacation or short trip or so. But we have a very nice family and very nice friends who are so helpful. I think that's one thing that is so helpful, that you just tell them, if you would like to do something for yourself, we can be here, we can help. Of course, it also depends on the child's condition. Our eldest daughter, people who would take care of her, they would need to know her a little bit because she cannot talk. And now she's quite big and she's strong. And if she doesn't cooperate, then you need to be physical,
And from the other point of view, if you could give advice to parents who got a difficult diagnosis for their kid, what would you tell them now, looking back?
Oh, that's so difficult. First of all, I would like to give advice to these institutions who give this diagnosis. And this is maybe...
That seemed terrible. That seemed really rough. I mean, I appreciate that for them it's their kind of reality because they deal with it on a regular basis.
Exactly.
But still, I think there's a way of delivering this kind of terrible news.
My second daughter, when she was born, she had to go immediately to the children's hospital because we had some oxygen problem. We didn't know whether she would make it or not. And she spent 2 weeks in the IC. But at that time, on the second day, there was a social worker coming to you. There was a psychotherapist coming to you. And it was kind of a holistic approach, Of course, that's the medical thing. And then that's the family and taking care of all the different aspects. And in the case of our first daughter, it was totally different. And I was sometimes thinking about maybe they have to do it in this way. But still, if they would ask me, I would say, please consider to have a care person for these discussions when the families get the results, to have a kind of guideline and then give a paper. And to other families, it's difficult. It's difficult, but there's no solution in the sense of that you get a diagnosis and there's immediate a solution to that. Maybe you need to go through these 3 stages. You will go through these 3 stages. You have to go to it because no one can take it away from you. And maybe this also prepares you for the future, because after a certain time, the interest will go away, maybe also from your family, from your friends. You don't have many checkups, and then you are left alone with day by day with the care work. And you also need to be prepared for that.
And you know what? This podcast has been totally different than all the ones I've done before. And to make it even more strange, to cap it off, I will jump back to my initial segment, True or False, and I give you 1 or 2 more.
Wow.
We'll finish this podcast. The next True or False is, you are the strict parent, your wife is the soft one.
False. Definitely false. I would say she's the strict one, yeah.
And you are soft in which sense?
She is a strict one with a very soft heart, and I am the soft one with a very soft heart.
I know the strict heart. Okay.
Yeah.
It's even sound a little diplomatic how you said it.
I have to diplomatic normally. That's public.
Yeah,
we are in public sphere, and I'm talking about my wife.
I think the last True or False is your children have taught you more about life than any Dalai Lama ever could.
Absolutely true.
Thank you for talking to me.
You're welcome, and feel very blessed and honored to be your guest. And at the same time, I was wondering why it took so long. till I got your invitation. And your podcast is amazing. I still remember when you asked your first guest, Chimbala, why he went to school. And he said, because of my friends. Yeah. That's the true spirit. And I still don't know why you asked this young Rinpoche totally out of the blue why he's into samurai. No, not samurai. Why he's into sumo. I totally still don't get it. But maybe that's the beauty of this podcast. It leaves room for such questions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, my friend, my brother, from another mother and from another father.
I hope you enjoyed this Out of Tibet podcast. Before you leave, I want to let you know that I'm doing this podcast in my own free time, and I pay for all the equipment and software needed for recording or brushing up the audio. Therefore, it'd be great if you'd consider supporting me financially on my Patreon or PayPal, so I can continue making more free podcasts for you guys. Please check the show notes for all the details how to support this podcast financially. And if you don't happen to have any money to spare, I would love it if you'd subscribe, give this podcast 5 stars, left a positive review with Spotify, Apple, or wherever you are listening. Thank you very much in advance, and hope to see you in Tibet